Hey guys, welcome to Gravitational Fields, one of the last little pieces of things we'll study for our circular motion and gravitation unit here. And so the idea of fields is actually a pretty abstract idea. So we can read it here, but back in the day, scientists didn't really know how two objects could exert a force on each other without touching each other. And in order to help us visualize that, the idea of fields was created, and it seems to make sense now, but that was very abstract at the time. So a field in the physics sense is an area of influence, and so to help us envision that, think about a campfire, and it makes sense as you approach the fire. What happens to the field strength and/or the heat? And so as it should, the field strength increases, or that fire that we feel, the strength that increases. So as we increase the size of the fire, so the same thing happens, the field strength increases. So if we, think about it, you can do a little mental experiment here, we can do the same thing with a body of mass, right? Think about like a giant star or something like that, or even a black hole. As we approach the star or the large body of mass, the gravitational field we feel will increase. If we increase the size of the star or the mass or whatever, just like we increase the size of the fire, that same field that we feel will also increase. So just like just like a heat field, the so-called heat field that we were feeling with the campfire, a gravitational field, once again, it's surrounded by any mass. So every body of mass creates a gravity field. And fields can be either scalar or vector. So when we were talking about the campfire, it is obviously a scalar thing, because we were just measuring the temperature or how hot that field was. A gravitational field is different because it has a direction also, okay? And so one of the ways we can see that is if I have my planet here, and I'm going to draw all of these force vectors or these gravitational vectors, and they're going to go all towards the center of mass of the object. So as we see here, all these yellow things are the field lines that the Earth is feeling. And if you notice something kind of interesting, once again, it's to help us visualize it. But the closer I am here to the center, see how the field lines are very dense? And then if I go way out here above the surface of the Earth, it looks like they're farther apart. Okay, so this is one of the ways that we can visualize the strength of the field. The closer I am to the center of the object, the more dense the lines become, therefore the stronger or the bigger the field magnitude of the field is. And the farther out we go, the less strong it is, okay? And so we already have a pretty good idea of what this is called. The field strength name is basically the acceleration due to gravity, or better known as little g. And for us, near the surface of the Earth, that is 9.8 meters per second squared, okay? So if we remember that Fg is equal to mg, we can rewrite this equation for little g is going to equal Fg over m, right? The force of gravity. And if we remember from our last set of notes, that Fg has a very different way we can express it also. Okay, so once again, little g has a couple different names now. It is the acceleration due to gravity. For us right now, we're studying the gravitational field strength. And currently, as we're sitting out here watching this cool video here, near the Earth's surface, it's about 9.8 meters per second squared. So it works fine if we stay put in Earth, but once we leave our beloved terra firma, g varies with distance, okay? So what happens is we have a much more useful formula we can have. If we remember, Fg is equal to big G m1 m2 over r squared. We have the other way to say Fg is equal to mass times gravity. And in this case, I'm going to call this m2, that is like the mass of an object sitting on Earth. And if we notice over here, I'm going to put a little red dot over m1, M1 is going to be called the Earth, or the body producing the gravitational field, so planet X, Earth, whatever it is. When we rearrange this, we have M2G is equal to big G M1 M2 over R squared. What happens is the M2's cancel, and I get this equation, G equals big G M1 over R squared. So once again, G varies with distance. In other words, the field strength we feel, this visualization that we have for the planet up here, follows this idea down here. So this is the gravitational field strength or the pull of gravity for whatever situation you might have. So a quick example, so gravitational field strength on the surface of the moon, we're looking for little g on the moon. So it looks something like this. Little g is equal to big G, mass of the moon, R squared. Plug everything in. 6.67 times 10 to the negative 11th. 7.35 times 10 to the 22. That is the mass of the moon. Divided by the radius of the moon. So we're sitting on the surface of the moon here. Times 10 to the 6th. Square that guy. So we get about 1.62 meters per second squared, right? So this is the value of G on the surface of the moon. We expect it should be less than the Earth, and turns out it is. All right. Another kind of example that we'll have is a bit more complicated is what happens when we want to know the orbital period or the time it takes to go around. So we have our Earth, we have the satellite going around it. We have the orbital radius here. This is what it gives us. And so the way I would approach this one is I know that the centripetal force has to equal to the gravitational force. That means the mass times the centripetal acceleration of the object is m times g. So what happens here is that's the mass of the object itself. It cancels out. So I get this idea. I get this centripetal acceleration is equal to little g. Well, I have two different ways I can express each of these. For the centripetal acceleration piece, I'm going to kind of follow myself over here. We're going to use that weird way to find the centripetal acceleration, that 4 pi squared r over t squared. That's where we're going to find the period for what we're looking for. And for g, we're going to use the thing we just derived here, g m1 over r squared. So if I rearrange this and solve for t, I get t is equal to 4 pi squared r cubed over g times m. And if we need to, come and let me know if we need to figure out how we did that to see what we did. But all we do is we plug and chug. So it's 4 pi squared 2.20 times 10 to the 7th squared, or cubed, all over big G 6.67 times 10 to the negative 11th times the mass of the Earth, 5.98 times 10 to the 24th. You can look that up, or I'll give it to you on quizzes and tests like that. Take the square root of that, and so we get the orbital period of about 32,500 seconds, or about 9 hours if you were interested. Okay, so that's going to be how we solve these kinds of questions. We have to remember in the back of our heads that A sub c, or the centripetal acceleration formulas, knowing that centripetal force and gravitational force are going to be related, especially if they're in orbit with each other. So we have the idea of geosynchronous orbits. And so GPS satellites, they have to remain stationary above the Earth. So they rotate with the Earth every 24 hours. That's what their orbital period is going to be. That's how those work. They have to kind of sit in the same spot so the signal works. So we have a couple of some conceptual questions here. We have the following situations. Which satellite will be traveling faster in each case? Satellite A orbits the Earth at twice the orbital radius of satellite B. Okay, so remember, this is because it's gravitationally stuff. Here's how this works. So this one, satellite B, because it's closer, the gravitational force has to be greater. Because its gravitational force is greater, it has to move faster to stay in orbit. So when we're talking about things orbiting, when gravity is involved, the closer you are to the planet or to the body of mass creating the gravitational field, the faster the object has to travel in order to stay in orbit. So same question for part B here. Satellite A orbits the sun at the same orbital radius that satellite B orbits the Earth. And so what you have to do is you have to pay attention to the bodies of mass that it's created here. And in this case, it looks like the satellite A orbits faster. So because the sun is larger, same reason as above, the force of gravity is greater. Since that gravitational field is stronger or greater, the object or the satellite must move faster in order to stay in orbit. Otherwise, it spirals down and hits the star, just like in our simulation. So the orbital period of the satellite depends only on the mass of the planet and the orbital radius of the satellite, right? Stands to reason, therefore, that a certain orbital distance, the orbital period, will match the rotational period of the planet. So for in an Earth's case, 24 hours. Such a satellite is said to be in geosynchronous or geostationary orbit. So we have a quick example here on how to handle a question like this. So find the orbital radius of a satellite that is geostationary above the Earth's equator. So first off, here's what we're looking for. Here's Earth, there's the satellite, and that's what we're looking for there, the orbital radius. That's the distance we're looking for here. So the period of the Earth, we know, is 24 hours. And some quick calculations leads us to about this many seconds in a day. So about 86,400 seconds per day. So using the technique we use about the satellite orbiting the Earth, the example above, we have the centripetal acceleration is equal to the gravitational field strength. So we can use this guy here, this 4 pi squared r over t squared is equal to big G times the mass of the Earth over r squared. So solving for r, once again, I'm taking a couple of shortcuts here, but r ends up being the cube root of big G times m times t squared over 4 pi squared. That piece doesn't change. So when I plug everything in, once we crunch those numbers, we get about 4.2 times 10 to the 7th meters. That's going to be the orbital radius for some kind of geosynchronous orbit. So all of those cool GPS satellites, some communication satellites, they're all sitting in the same spot above the Earth, which is pretty cool. To find the speed of the satellite, that's pretty straightforward, especially since we know the radius. Remember, the velocity is the distance something travels divided by time. In this case, it's circumference over big T, the period of the satellite. So this is 2 pi r over big T. So when I plug all this in, I get 2 pi times 4.2 times 10 to the 7th over my 86,400 seconds. So the velocity of this thing is about 3,070 meters per second, or about 67 miles per hour. So once things go in orbit, they move pretty quickly, much faster than things can move on Earth. So anyway, so that is the notes for the gravitational fields. You have a short problem set over this guy. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys on Monday. Thanks, bye.